Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the episode number 1 of Breakfast in Shattrath, our very first episode of our Burning Crusade Classic beta podcast. We'll see what happens after that. But today, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Kexman, of course, and our very special guest, BiosparksTV. How you doing, guys?
Yeah, not doing too badly. Very relaxed on this Friday morning. Burning Crusade is, of course, here, so there's a lot of exciting new old things that we can take a look at once more. Very excited to be having some breakfast right here in Shattrath.
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you guys for having me on. First time I've ever been on the podcast, so a little bit nervous, but still very excited as well. So, and plus being around some British folks as well, kind of familiarity there.
Fantastic, yeah. It is, yeah. It's a British podcast.
It's
fantastic.
a British... Who's heard of a British podcast in WoW?
Get the tea together, boys. It's time to talk about World of Warcraft.
I think there's actually only one other British podcast that I know of, and that's Girls Gone WoW. I think that's the only other podcast that has been hosted exclusively by British people, I think. I can't think of any others off the top of my head.
Is that the rule? All our guests have to be British now, or they have to put on British accents when they come on?
I like the British accents. I really like the idea of the British accents.
Fantastic. All right, well, welcome everybody, welcome chat, welcome everybody watching live here on twitch.tv/MrGM. So I guess we'll start off with Biosparks. How you been enjoying it? What's the thoughts on the beta so far? I think we're about just over a week in, about a ton of builds. So yeah, what you been doing on there?
Well, I got invited a little bit late to the party. I wasn't I wasn't in that first wave, but mostly at the moment I've just been looking at the dungeon leveling. I mean, most people know me because of that dungeon leveling guide that I posted pretty much when they announced TBC launch. The actual announcement of the game itself. And yeah, it's looking pretty good in terms of experience and things like that. And a lot of people have been coming into my stream saying this seems to be the meta for me. This suits me. And they're looking for spell cleave, melee cleave, and everything else. So mostly just looking at the dungeon leveling side of things, but also a bit of questing here and there. But overall, it seems like my only general complaint at the moment is I feel like there's just not enough people around. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this, but if you look around it for groups or things like that, there's not too many people around for certain, especially tanks. Tanks is a big problem at the moment.
Yeah, it does feel as though it's a little bit thin on the ground, and I suppose it also depends on the people that are there and what they're testing at the same time as well, because you've got some people that have absolutely sped ahead. I think it was Sfan last night that tweeted out, he's basically said, well, I'm 68 now I just wait until they raise the level cap to 70. And there are a couple of people that are kind of obviously hanging back, testing various different things. So there's not only are there not a lot of people in the beta at this point in time, or there's not as many people in the beta as we would like. There's also, obviously, because of the level differences between everything, that also thins out the pack too. So you're going to struggle to find stuff like healers. You're going to struggle to find stuff like tanks. And, I mean, tanks are a rarity anyway. So it's not exactly helping with it being a beta that has so few people. I know I think, I can't remember, was it yourself, Mr. GM? Did you tweet? I think you tweeted something out about not having enough people, or you said something about not having enough people to properly test dungeons because it was just that thin on the ground.
Yeah, it's really I've been saying this on stream as well, I think once Blizzard put in the look at the group finder, the pre-made group finder, people are going to be doing a ton more dungeons. It's so funny now with the way that WoW works, everything's so easy and kind of there for you. You find that people just can't be bothered to make groups. They can't be bothered to go on the LFG channel. They can't be bothered to say, looking for one more DPS or whatever. But I think once the pre-made group finder comes in, which was obviously a feature back in Burning Crusade, which they've said they are changing to probably... my prediction is it's essentially going to be almost identical to... that cup is incredible. Almost identical to... the one that we have in retail right now. The one that we use for Mythic Plus and things like that. Where essentially it's just it doesn't teleport you, doesn't do anything like that, but essentially it's just you've put yourself out there, I want to do a dungeon sort of thing. And I think that's going to be good. As for like the amount of people, yeah, the first wave at BioSparks, you're lucky to not be in it. It was honestly, I was alone. I was running around Hellfire
Yep.
alone, and it was not a good time. But yeah, no, it is slowly getting a bit more busy. They have invited, a few more like people who aren't streamers or friends and family and things like that, which is good. And I really do hope they do invite more, because something like that, especially Burning Crusade, needs a lot of people. You need a lot of people in there to be testing pretty much everything. And hopefully they do stress tests as well. That's something we saw in Classic Beta as well, was stress testing. And especially with Burning Crusade, where everybody's piling into Hellfire at the exact same time. It is going to be a absolute logistical nightmare. But yeah, there is layering as well, which has been really annoying. I've been trying to like test stuff and I'm inviting people and then they're not there. I'm like, what? And then like 10 minutes later, they'll like fade in. So that's another issue. But yeah, I mean, for me, I haven't really stepped foot in Outland at all. I think the first day I got kind of excited, ran in there and just kind of set up my character and ran around Outland. I was like, okay, yeah. And then since then, I've been kind of focusing on the low-level stuff. I've been doing Draenei, Blood Elf, kind of like focus testing all of that, because I know that is the first thing that's coming out. That's pre-patch content, right? So the sooner that gets ready, the sooner pre-patch can, get into people's hands, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're releasing that as pre-patch as well, and I suppose it's so people can kind of go through that starting experience and be ready to head straight into the wide world of Azeroth before they head to obviously Outland for Burning Crusade. And I pretty much did the first thing I did. I got into Hellfire, and I beelined it to Shattrath, and the reason I did that was because obviously the way it's working, it's technically running on one of the later patches. I think it's 2.3, 2.4, something like that.
Yep.
And the first thing I did was I beelined it there because I wanted to see if they actually had the Shattered Sun portals there.
Mm-hmm.
And
I did the same.
They did not. Yeah, they didn't. They're not there. They're not there. So that was kind of my plan, was heading straight there. And then the next thing I did was, okay, well, they haven't introduced that, but have they introduced some of the stuff, obviously, for Zul and Man? And when I went there, the Zulaman doors were open. Mm-hmm. There were no NPCs. The Zulaman doors were open. The portal was there, but you could, you had to be level 68 or higher to access it. So, it'd be interesting to see if they close those beforehand or if they just leave them open, because it doesn't really realistically make that much of a difference if the raid's not in until, phase 3 or whichever one it is. But no, it was interesting to get back into there and kind of, I've always been, I enjoyed the hell out of TBC, but I don't consider it the best expansion. I know a lot of people kind of live and die on Burning Crusade being the best expansion. And my memory of Hellfire Peninsula has always been, whenever I've tried to level an alt, is getting to Hellfire Peninsula and just going, oh God, before they introduced Chromie time. Mm-hmm. When I went back in the beta, I went through the portal and I went, okay, now I remember why this place is as good as it is, because it is that feeling of, it's your classic character. It's how it's meant to be. And it was a weird experience because it did feel different despite it being exactly the same.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because obviously all of this content is actually in retail right now. You can literally go to Hellfire Peninsula. You can do the exact same quests. Burning Crusade essentially has been untouched since the Burning Crusade, and it's some of the oldest content in retail WoW right now. So BiosparksTV, you were saying about like farming dungeons and leveling that way. What kind of like dungeons have you been doing on what class and things like that?
So far, pretty much I did like, so I'm just about to hit level 64. So today, hopefully I'll test out Manitoons, but pretty much I've been testing Ramparts, Blood Furnace, Slave Pens, and the Underdog. And pretty much like, so I play a rogue. I transferred over my tier 3 character because, again, the idea was a lot of people were doubting like how fast people can clear these dungeons, even with tier 3. And I think a lot of people do underestimate just how disgusting the power scaling is in Classic from like tier 2.5 to tier 3.
Yep.
And I've also have a guy who has a Paladin tank channel as well. He pops into my stream sometimes. And he basically runs a 1 Paladin, 3 Mage, and 1 Priest Slave Pens. And they got it to about 15 minutes. And these are people that haven't played together ever. So It's not like a sort of 5-man stack. It's actually crazy how quickly these dungeons can be cleared and the amount of experience that you can get as well. So it's looking like if you are one of those people that you just want to get to like the sort of end game content, you want to get to Karazhan quickly, get a week 1 in, the best thing at the moment, it does seem like just team up with, 4 of your mates, have a good time and enjoy the journey pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting point that you've actually brought up there, because back when we went from vanilla, the original vanilla, to Burning Crusade, the majority of the player base and a vast majority of the player base had never stepped foot in Naxxramas. They hadn't even, got tier 3. And it's fair to say that, a majority of the player base didn't even have like full sets of 2.5 or BIS items or anything along those sort of lines going into Burning Crusade. Now we're kind of seeing the opposite, where because of the way the player base has evolved, and Classic is pretty much the exact same as it was, but realistically, the players have gotten better over time. They're able to clear these dungeons. I think a lot of people's experience with Burning Crusade will be very, very different than what they originally had, because they've been able to spend this time in Classic, because they've been able to get as much gear as possible. They'll step in, and I think a lot of people are underestimating just how quickly they are going to chew through some of the quests that are available. And I wouldn't be surprised to see someone on the forums going, "Oh, TBC, it's a lot easier than I remember. What's happened? Have they changed something?" No, they haven't changed anything. It's just that you're going in with a shed load of gear that you didn't have previously.
Yeah, which I guess brings us to the next point, I guess. For fresh players, or players who didn't play Classic World of Warcraft to the extent, obviously there will be the 58 boost, which obviously a point of contention for a lot of people. Personally, I don't know. Like, there's so many people that are like dooming and glooming it, right? With like saying there's going to be people like using bots using it and stuff like that, which obviously could potentially happen. But I don't know. I think on a personal level, I would have preferred a flat XP increase for one character. So at least then the players will see the Classic experience, but they'll also learn their class along the way. Because I feel like people will buy the boost and kind of be maybe overwhelmed. I think one of the good things about Classic and the kind of cadence of leveling is you learn your class as you go. Like, I've been leveling a Hunter recently on Classic WoW. I'm 44 at the moment. Didn't know a single thing about Hunter going in. And now, like, it's been really good. Like, I'm slowly learning it. Every couple levels I get a new ability, and you kind of get that muscle memory of your abilities. You kind of put stuff where you want it and whatnot. And I feel like just going in at 58 and getting a million abilities and not knowing anything about that class might be a bit overwhelming for some people.
I mean, I think it all comes down to like sort of, like that attachment to your character. I mean, I've spoken about this before, and it's a bit like, as you say, you learn your character, you become more attached to that character, and you become invested in that character. And I did feel like if Blizzard was really worried, I mean, I feel like at BlizzCon, they did sort of make a big message out of, we don't want people sort of stuck in Azeroth whilst all their friends are playing in Outland. And, I get that. Like, that wasn't really great game design back in the day. And when we look at it now, if they were really worried about that, I mean, they could have just nerfed the experience required to get to 58 or something. I just feel like the boost wasn't really necessary if they went about it in a different way, because I mean, experience gets nerfed already. There's going to be a lot of people playing in the pre-patch because all the Blood Elves are coming. Like, we know the Blood Elves are coming. Yep. Most popular, like, historically race in WoW. So I don't know, I always felt like the boost didn't really need to be there, but at the end of the day, like, when we talk about money, like, money talks, right? So it's a bit of a funny one, honestly. And I know everyone has their own point of view, but I do feel like the game would have been fine without it. If, again, another point of contention is, how long is the pre-patch? Is it going to be 4 weeks, 8 weeks? Who knows? Like, we don't really know how long Blizzard is going to give people to level up their characters. So that could be another issue where if they're saying, oh, we're providing a boost, maybe they're only looking at a small amount of pre-patch time before launch, and that's why they're worried about players not sort of getting to level 58 in time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I suppose the other side of it is, I get why they've added the boost in, because there are a lot of people that I have spoken to. I played Classic pretty hard when the lockdown hit last year, and I think for about 6 or 7 months I was raiding like 4 or 5 times a week. I was fully into the world buff meta, everything like that. Nax came out, and I think I got to a point where we managed to get to Hygen, and 75% of the raid died within the first dance. And at that point, I kind of went, okay, this is, now Nax is out. This is a lot to deal with. And I just burnt myself out hard on it. But TBC obviously makes me go, yes, I definitely want to get involved in this. I want to get, I want to do my first Karazhan run. And I know a lot of people that have kind of ignored Classic. They were like, yeah, Classic, not really for me. I don't really have the interest. However, as soon as TBC was announced, they were like, yes, I want to get involved in TBC. I want to do my first Karazhan, etc., etc. And almost having that, I suppose, stepping stone of having to go through Classic could potentially turn quite a few people off. I can understand the other side of it, though, where, as you mentioned, you do obviously want to go through Classic. You want to kind of learn your class. I think a lot of people that would buy the boost that would experience TBC are probably people who have played the game before. They do know their class from that sort of era. They would potentially look at places like Wowhead, Icy Veins at guides and such. So, if they are going to boost a class, it's going to be something that they understand, something that they enjoy playing. But then there's also the risk of the people that come in that buy the boost that don't necessarily know anything about it. And, as you mentioned, they're going to get overwhelmed. They're going to get overwhelmed really quickly, especially the way that some of the early quests in Hellfire Peninsula, it doesn't hold your hand at all. It's essentially there to say, yes, we fully understand that you have played through Classic, you know your class, you're going to have to deal with some more difficult enemies than you're used to. And it could turn a lot of people off, but at the same time, the boost could bring a lot of people in. I don't know. It's not exactly a black and white situation.
Yeah, I think like with the boost as well, it's so funny. So many people come into my chat all the time, just like, oh yeah, like I'm going to use the boost, and I'm like, it's paid, and they're like, because a lot of people think it's free. A lot of people think that you're going to get it for free, and I don't know why they think that. That was never mentioned. It's obviously, it will be a paid service that you get one of, and we don't know the price of it right now. Rumors, people saying $60 or so, like, which is whatever it is on retail right now, but. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And one thing I think people kind of didn't realize about Burning Crusade or didn't remember is it takes a very long time to get to level 70. It is not retail, like where you go from back before they did the squish, 60 to 70 in like a couple hours. It's a long thing. I mean, you see like right now, like a lot of streamers that you see, not all of them are 68, and they got to 68 through, like BioSparks did, like going through dungeons and things like that. For me personally, I will do the questing. I think I'll I'll sprinkle in some dungeons here and there. I like Ramparts a lot. It's one of my favorite dungeons in World of Warcraft. It's a great dungeon in general.
Yes.
But I think in general, I will try and quest. It's going to be difficult because there's going to be a lot of people around, and there ain't no way I'm playing on a PvP server again. That was the worst experience of my life. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting experience for sure. And I was so curious as well with Burning Crusade coming out, like. With Classic, we hadn't seen those old Classic zones for so long. But with Burning Crusade, as I mentioned before, it's in retail. You can literally go and play those exact quests right now. And I really thought that was going to hinder the hype, but it really hasn't. People are still excited to see Nagram. People are still excited to see Blade's Edge, even though you can literally just go there right now. And I guess it's just having that whole Burning Crusade environment that gets people excited because there is so much good stuff in Burning Crusade as a general expansion. It's like... For me, Classic is good, but Burning Crusade is the end game. I really do enjoy that expansion a lot, and I feel like they made some very, very good changes. And I'm looking forward to like the future of the beta, where we have like pre-made 70s, arena servers, all of that kind of testing is going to be super, super fun and super entertaining to watch on all platforms from everyone doing it. It's going to be a great time, but we're only, as I said, a week in, and they are progressing extremely quickly. They are 68 now, start off at 64. When do you think we're going to get 70 BioSparks? Do you think we're going to get it next week?
I thought if it's not next week, definitely the week after. I mean, I was thinking to myself, because the big question mark is like raids and like heroics. And I feel like there's that idea of like how difficult is Karazhan going to be at entry level, and how are heroics going to be at entry level. And again, it depends on if you've got your tier 3 gear, if you've got pre-raid bis, stuff like that. But not everyone's going to have that. So I feel like maybe 2 weeks. I think I'm going to be a little bit more conservative in this estimation because, at 68, you do have a little bit more content. You can start doing like Caverns of Time, Black Morass. You can sort of push around into the Shadow Labyrinth if you're confident, or even Shattered Halls. So I think there's a little bit more that people can sort of milk. I think a lot of people are kind of just sort of sitting on their hands a little bit, saying, "Oh, I'm 68. There's not much to do." Like there is stuff to do. So maybe a couple weeks.
Right. Yeah, I think the interesting thing. Sorry, Cakes, man. Go on, you go.
It's fine. No, I was just kind of I was going to agree. You know, you get to 68 and it opens up a lot more, and obviously you've got to spend. You know, I mean, getting from 64 to 68, you've got to spend about 7 hours to do a single Durnhold run, if I remember rightly, if my memory serves me right. So you know, you've kind of got to get through that first, but it does. You know, and you mentioned that it is in retail at this moment. People can go and view it, and I think that doesn't. I don't think that massively affects people because realistically, you go. I would expect the only reason people would go into Outland is either to, you know, either if they want to go and sit in Nagrand, which is, you know, probably the most beautiful zone in all of WoW at this point in time. I don't care what people say. There's some great looking zones, but Nagrand is absolutely gorgeous. Or number two, to try and get Ashes of Alar, sorry, from, you know, obviously from Tempest Keep. So that is realistically the only reason you would head to TBC. So, you know, and if you go into it when you're leveling an alt, you absolutely blaze through it and you don't really pay attention to what's going on at this point in time. So there is still going to be that nostalgia hit, especially if people are questing. They'll come across quests that they remember from long ago and they will go, oh wow, I really remember this quest. For me, there's a particular quest in Shadowmoon Valley that involves helping boars dig up tubers. For those of you that remember it, it's a horrific quest, but I'm looking forward to getting to it.
Nice. Yeah, that's so specific. What a specific memory.
It was because, and I think the reason why is there was, when I was doing it, it was before obviously the later patches where they kind of nerfed a couple of things, but you know, that particular quest was just, it was so annoying because there were mobs around the area that you'd have to use a whistle to call the boar over. There were mobs around the area, but they had a massive aggro range. And as soon as a boar popped up, it would beeline towards the boar and just tear it to shreds so you wouldn't get the tuber. And I think you had to get about 9 of them or 8 or something like that. And as a warrior at the time, I was crying. It was like you'd try and do something and then 2 or 3 of these would run in. And as a warrior, you know, if 2 or 3 mobs run at you while you're leveling in Classic or TBC, it's not going to go well for you. So I remember that quest legitimately taking me, I think, a couple of different periods of time over about 3 days. It was horrific. And I want to see if it's back into its original, if it's in its original state. That thing was hell.
It's going to be in its original state, I'm sorry to say.
Good.
That's what it's going to be like. So BioSparks mentioned raids and gearing and stuff like that. One interesting thing that's actually popped up within the last week on the beta is a flask vendor or a reagents vendor and a gear vendor for raid testing and the raid testing NPC. So it looks like raid testing is confirmed to happen at some point. So that's interesting because that never happened in Classic WoW beta. We never even got to level 60 in Classic WoW beta. You know, and so this is huge. Yeah. We will potentially be seeing, you know, that tier 4 tier. What is it? Gruul's Lair, Karazhan, and Magtheridon, of course. So I'll be curious to see what that vendor sells. Currently, he sells nothing. So it'll be interesting to see if he does sell pre-raid bis or he does sell, you know, tier 4, which would be interesting. So I guess it's just on Blizzard's point, like, well, they want to, you know, how geared do they want people going into that? Obviously, and then, you know, presumably level 70 pre-mades will be coming as well. That's got to be a given at this point. Like they're not going to make everyone level up to 70, or they'll do what they do in retail where they could just kind of like, doesn't matter what level you are, they'll just be scaled up as soon as you walk into that raid. So be interesting to see what they do with that, but I'm looking forward to it for sure. Like raid testing is going to be great. Karazhan, one of the best raids in WoW. It's super long, it's super crazy, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that. And I think definitely, like, you know, kind of going back to what we mentioned earlier, they need a lot more people in there if they want to do raid testing and they want to do, like, all of that stuff. Obviously, Karazhan is only 10 man, but you still need a lot of people. You still need people that you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, it's all fine and good having, you know, yourself, but you also need, like, your friends and people that you play with and stuff like that. So hopefully they do kind of open it up to a wider audience, because I know, you know, in my experience, a lot of my viewers really want to get in there and they really want to help me out with stuff like that, because I do really random things. Like one thing I was doing yesterday was, you mentioned Isla Quell Danas. I went to Eversong Woods, swam up, because the island's in there, because it is using the 2.4 data, and there's an invisible wall. So what I did was got a shaman, water walking, got someone to fear me, tried to go through the invisible wall, but it didn't work. I just went down and then drowned in the fatigue, so that didn't work. But testing nonetheless, you know?
I remember this. I was doing so when the beta first came out. I did the exact same thing, and I was in a Discord call with a couple of other people, and I think it was one of my friends, Dunkirk, was watching your stream at the exact same time, and we both, and he basically said you both ended up in the same place in Eversong Woods, trying to get to the Eye of Quel'Danas at almost the exact same time. I managed to farsight over there.
Yeah, I farsighted over there. Yeah, there's nothing there, sadly.
There's nothing there, which was kind of expected. But you mention obviously the whole idea of raid testing, and I'd be interested to hear your input on this, BioSparks. But the fact that they have put in these reagent vendors, flask vendors, gear vendors, which heavily hints towards raid testing potentially. We didn't see that in Classic. Is there something to read in on this? Are they potentially looking at kind of the gear that we have coming in from Classic WoW and I know a lot of people kind of say no changes, they don't want anything, but would it be in potentially Blizzard's interest to tweak some of the numbers slightly so that raid content doesn't get steamrolled within, say, 2 weeks?
I mean, yeah, the thing is, I guess it's like tinfoil hat territory, but I was kind of hoping like when people do raid testing, people go in with leatherworking drums and see how like just how toxic the environment gets, and then they do something about it. But I think, I don't know, because from the blue post when they were addressing the drums, they did say they wanted to not tweak anything if possible. So I do feel like it's probably going to be more of like, is everything working correctly? I mean, we even had like the second boss, Gazan in Underbog, would literally disconnect you from the client, right? It would just crash everything. So people don't want to be going to Karazhan first week and then having that happen. So I do feel it's more of a technical side of things. I feel like, whenever we start entering the territory of like, are they going to tweak something? I mean, again, like, I guess everything is kind of on the table because they have opened the door to some changes, and then that's a very broad topic of what some changes are. So yeah, so I think maybe we'll see. I think it'll be very, very unlikely that they'll change anything in the raids unless they have like a big sort of shift in sort of philosophy and kind of like, okay, stuff is really, really too easy, and we saw how this panned out in Classic, so let's tweak a few numbers here and there, maybe change a few things about leatherworking drums. So it might happen. I don't know. It's one of those things where this is Blizzard at the end of the day, right? Anything can literally happen with them.
I don't know what you're talking about. They've already made amazing changes to leatherworking drums. No one has to be a leatherworker anymore. They've really, they've really hit that nail on the head. It's done. It's the book's closed on that. They sorted it. It's repaired. Oh wait, no, that other thing. Yeah, no, leatherworking drums. Wow, what a mess. what a mess. It blows my mind, like, because even in the interview that I did with Brian and John, they even like hinted to the fact, like, he literally said we don't want everyone to be a leatherworker, like. And it's so funny to me, like, the community is obviously suggesting just make them the same as retail, give you the debuff or whatever, like, very simple. It's either that or you make them not require leatherworking. It's two very, very easy fixes, but yet they just don't. Like, they just overcomplicate it. And I think the problem is it's going to really sour the community where they don't make a change like that, but yet they potentially, and this is a potential, don't misconstrue me, potentially adding a mount, like, it's where's the line? Where do you draw the line on changes?
Yeah. It is one of those things, I suppose. Again, the people that are asking for an authentic experience, the problem you have is it's never going to be an authentic experience because of the amount of information that you have going into Burning Crusade, knowing exactly what's going to happen. And I feel as though there is, I think, I don't know, it is a tough one, and I believe that instead of trying to completely 100% replicate that authentic experience, which will never happen, I think it needs to be more a case of, okay, people loved the journey, people loved the content was in there, that was in Burning Crusade. Let's make it so it feels good, not necessarily authentic, because there are two differences there. And the testing, I think, is slightly different, because what a lot of people don't realize is, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, the Burning Crusade Classic is technically running on 9.0.5. That's kind of what it's using as its base.
Yeah, it's like 9.0, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, so obviously there's going to be some potential hiccups between, trying to integrate it into that. So, they have to turn around and they will have to test stuff. As you mentioned, second boss, I believe Wunderbog was disconnecting a lot of people. Again, you don't want that to happen. Imagine if you went into Gruul, he did his slam, all 25 of you instantly disconnected at the same time. It would be a little bit disappointing. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But, the testing does make sense, I suppose. How far that testing goes, I don't know. I think there will probably be... I imagine we'll get the first tier of testing. We'll probably see Magtheridon, Gruul, and Karazhan. I can't imagine... I would be surprised if we test any further than that. No. I think there's going to be a lot more internal testing with that. But it's still very, very exciting. And you mentioned the drums change. I do believe there are lessons that again need to be learned. And I think it all boils down to don't try and make it as authentic as possible. You're never going to be able to do that. Try and make it as fun as possible.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? I guess Keyboard Turner's just saying there in the chat that it's a mix of classic 9.0.5 and TBC numbers. So I think some people don't realize how much of a technical feat it is to make classic TBC. Like, it's not a case of just like turning on the 2.4 client and then there you go. Like, that's not it. I mean, what's cool about having it on the 9.0 client, there is some like kind of residual things that are included. Something, like ray tracing shadows, which I personally did have a look at, like in the Blood Elf area. Like, in retail, when you turn it on and off, you can't really notice. And I actually turned it on, like I was standing next to a light source, and it really makes a difference. Like, it actually is kind of a interesting thing. And it's funny because I specifically asked him that in the interview, and he was like, I don't know. And then it ended up being in there, which was cool. It's a shame,
so
really.
What you're saying is you are responsible for it.
It's all my fault, yeah. There's a feature in retail called Quick Keybind Mode, which is also really cool. And for some reason, that's not in, which kind of upset me because it's an awesome feature to keybind your abilities. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it also broke a lot of add-ons. Like, add-ons were enabled this week. That was kind of the big patch of the week. There wasn't a ton of content beyond... Actually, no, wait. They did have... No, it was 68 this week, wasn't it? All right, never mind.
68 was this week.
All right, it's been crazy. It's been a wild thing, right? It's so 68 this week. We have add-ons as well. Add-ons has been super interesting because it broke a ton of add-ons. Like, it just made a wave of, like, I copied my add-ons over from Classic. There was loads broken. I had to delete a ton. I had to like tweak some LUA stuff to get like at least some of it working. But yeah, some of them are really, really broken. And I am curious to see how far some add-ons will go with Classic WoW. I think what's interesting with the Classic WoW beta was they enabled add-ons, but add-ons didn't exist. So it was kind of it was kind of like a kind of mad rush to get add-ons working. But with this, like, people already have add-ons. People rely on add-ons. I didn't realize how much I relied on add-ons until day one of the beta that had no add-ons. I'm like, what the heck? Like, how do I do this? And like, the guys over at Questy, they've already got a Burning Crusade version already, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And, I think looking at how add-ons have come along, and you meant BioSparks, you mentioned obviously people doing dungeon questing for a lot of experience. How far do you think that people could potentially get with these add-ons that are coming in? Like, there's it's impressive just how big add-ons can change an experience like this. And again, it's one of those things, the experience is going to change because these add-ons are available.
I mean, I think everyone's come around since they've been around in Classic WoW for so long. I mean, I can't even imagine doing Nax Ramus anymore with the weak auras just telling me like, oh yeah, just this, the flying weapons after Vesuvius, like the axes have this really hard to see animation that they're actually whirlwinding, even though they don't actually look like they are. And it can that's the end of your world buffs if you stick around, right? So for me personally, like, when I logged in, I was like, I have a weak aura for Slice and Dice, right? Just so it's next to my character. I don't have to look in the top right corner. And it's like, whoa, okay. You feel really like naked without them. So I do think, I think people are going to be absolutely comfortable when whatever comes out. I don't think anyone really complained about weak auras or I mean, there's a huge range of add-ons. I mean, even for like, there's add-ons designed for Maraudon mages doing 500 mob pulls, like, I think it's just fully integrated as part of the game now. So I think people are absolutely fine. I know, like, way. I mean, I actually remember on the official WoW forums back in the day, people used to say that add-ons were cheating. I thought so. It's kind of funny to see how far we've come since then.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. I think on Wowhead, just a little point. There was, I believe, they discovered. I can't remember exactly how. I didn't necessarily read the article. I saw it, but they discovered the add-on that was included in Classic WoW that basically made
the
Blizzard
auction
go,
house.
Oh, we need to add an auction house into WoW, and they found the add-on, and it's interesting to see just how integrated add-ons have now become into what World of Warcraft is. And again, I don't think that's something you're not gonna escape from TBC, and it'll be interesting to see if anything new pops up for a lot of the dungeons. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some form of add-on that effectively played chess for you in Karazhan.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, weak auras is such a crazy thing. I recently did I casted for a Nax speedrunning event, and I'd never really seen any Nax speedrunning before, and I was so impressed with like all of their UIs, all of their weak auras that they use. Like some of them are so incredibly advanced and stuff. Like it's so funny because back, in 2.4 and back when people did play Burning Crusade and obviously more recently with those things, they do have add-ons, but they're not to the level of this. Weak auras never existed back then, and weak auras is such a powerful add-on where it's you can create add-ons inside of an add-on. It's absolutely insane, which is interesting. So yeah, I'm a big fan of add-ons in Classic. I really do like the way that people do it. Recently, there was an add-on that someone made which kind of crossed the line maybe a little bit, where they added achievements into Classic WoW and it was fully functioning, and I was like, I don't know about that.
It's an add-on. Just don't download it.
Yeah, it is true. It's an optional thing. It was all personal. I mean, obviously with achievements, you can get into a whole thing, right? Like like link achievements and stuff like that. It's all just the worst.
Yeah. Just link gear score.
Yeah. I think one thing that's like kind of concerning to me, and something that I've seen a lot, especially coming back to Classic WoW more recently, is the is it GDPK or whatever the
Yes.
So I'm curious how much that's going to be kind of advertised and what the rules will be in regards to using the dungeon finder to do that. What do you think?
Personally, I've had a few discussions, and I think when Black Temple comes around, you're going to see guilds that have like their resident rogue get their warglaives, and then they're basically like, okay, you bid for a spot in this raid. If the warglaive drops, you pay, I don't know, 100,000 gold or something like that. They're going to be in big demand. So GDKP is a really sort of, it's a funny one because, like, for example, I've pretty much funded my epic flying mount by going to GTKPs. But I didn't bid on anything. I just sort of let the big ticket items drop, let the big spenders spend, and then I reap the rewards. But again, it's a big issue because there's that issue of like there probably are people there buying gold as well.
Mm-hmm.
GTKP, I mean, it's a funny one. I don't think the culture is just going to disappear overnight, if at all. I think it might even be really, really prevalent, especially in for things like warglaives. Maybe when things like in Sunwell, like what's the legendary bow, Thoradal? I think
Thoradal.
That's the one. Yeah. So I think those. So the warglaive set and the bow. I think that we're going to see some sort of prime, massive gold bidding there for like, because again, like the raids are a lot smaller, and you're not going to take like loads of rogues to a 25-man raid. You'll sort of host like a Discord, and then you bid against other rogues beforehand, and you win the spot, right? And you have to pay the gold to earn the spot in the raid, and then you keep going until it drops. I think that's probably what's going to happen. But in terms of like stuff like Karazhan, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be like huge stuff in there that's worth a lot of money, I would say. Maybe like stuff like for Serpent Shrine Cavern, the vortexes that drop for the Storm Herald. I think a lot of PvP warriors that don't have guilds will want that, so they may pay guilds to run them through there. So I think it'll change in a few different ways, but I don't think it's going to go away by any means.
Yeah, I think this is an episode 1. I think we kind of, at least someone has to have some form of very, very divisive opinion. But here's mine with TBC. I feel as though they've said that they're not going to stop anybody from, they're not going to put a cap on the gold that people can take over and everything like that.
Oh, no.
The economy of Burning Crusade is going to be ruined from the start. Give us the WoW token in TBC. So you can sell WoW tokens, you can buy WoW tokens with gold. Because the economy is going to be ruined anyway. let's have that opportunity. That's my final bombshell.
It's a hot take.
It's a hot take. It's a hot take, and we'll see how people feel. But again, I think it would be good for the community.
How do you feel about that, BioSparks?
I mean, to be fair, I don't play retail enough to know too much about the effect of WoW tokens. I mean, one of my friends, he plays pretty much like side by side, classic and retail, and I know from his perspective, he's thought that kind of similar to yours. Like the WoW token can help a lot of things out because again, it can stop a lot of things in terms of botting and gold buying in general. But I think the real issue is we don't know how far the rabbit hole goes, and people have already been sort of thrown up into a frenzy, like you guys have mentioned before, with the potential store mounts coming out in TBC Classic. So it's a scary one because we can't predict how far, like what does the WoW token ultimately lead to. But on that note, I do think in terms of when if let's say Wrath Classic comes out, because there was a lot more sort of there was like a lot more sort of paid services that you could use. If it doesn't come out in TBC, I actually do have a sneaky feeling that WoW token will probably be a part of the game in Wrath Classic. That's sort of my little guess there.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Wrath also brought in like the Sparkle Pony as well, so that'd be interesting to see how they handle actual store mounts as well. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I mean, we're like, this Breakfast of Shattrath's kind of short, sharp podcast talking about Burning Crusade Classic, the beta, everything like that, and we're very, very privileged to have BiosparksTV as our very first guest. Any like places you want people? Where can people find you, BiosparksTV?
So pretty much everything is just under BiosparksTV. So twitch.tv/BiosparksTV and YouTube BiosparksTV. And I just want to say thank you guys for having me on, especially as a first guest. Really, really enjoyed coming on. And I hope I lived up to the expectations.
It was great. You did wonderful. Yeah. And you said it was your first podcast, right?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Amazing. Look at that. Did really great.
Absolutely nailed it.
Yeah. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I've been Mr. GM, BioSparks, as I mentioned, and Kexman. Before we go, our good friends at Warcraft Radio are currently doing some exclusive Burning Crusade themed merch. Here it is, guys. Here on the Warcraft Radio website. You can check this out. They've got a couple of great t-shirts here featuring the Warglaves there and some really nice, clean logos. So if you do want to check that out, if you do want to check that out, there is the link to that in the chat. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching this episode. I've been Mr. GM, and we'll be back next Friday for some more Breakfast in Shattrath.